It was the peak of the strong southern summer, and I was 5 years old, standing outside my local grocery store, holding a painted canvas bag. I had painted it myself, in fact, as part of my mom's reusable shopping bag campaign she started that year. I stood with her in front of our folding table display as we persuaded and practically begged passerbys to think twice about taking yet another plastic bag home that day. And I remember feeling, even at such a young age, that this process felt like swimming upstream on a dark, stormy day. Looking back, I admire my mom endlessly for staying there day in and day out, hoping to change the mind of just one shopper. With this hot summer day in mind, I'd like to talk about why it is so important to believe you can elicit change. Considering this reusable bag initiative was far from the only ecological campaign my parents spearheaded, and the fact that my mom cried when meeting her favorite environmentalist, it's safe to say many of my strongest held values are rooted in environmentalism. I'm always conscious of the eco-friendly choices I can make, whether that's taking a shorter shower or only buying secondhand clothing. The last few months, however, I have been slipping. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I resigned myself to the idea that my small actions were not changing anything. And maybe it was the pileup of abysmal climate reports and lack of large-scale response to those. Maybe it was a general fatigue for upholding these ideals and living the way that I chose to. Largely, however, I can point to a sentiment I've heard a million times, that it is all in the hands of corporations and governments to fix our environmental mess that we've created. Because of this rhetoric, I began to cut myself some slack. I treated myself to shopping sprees at box stores, and I brought home groceries in plastic bags without thinking twice. And I didn't feel guilty. I had comfortably placed the responsibility that I had previously felt on someone or something else, and it was no longer my problem. And it wasn't until quite recently that I realized how powerless and lazy this change had left me feeling. It was like I had fallen out with a very important part of myself. For me, I think this strange feeling can be partially explained by Enlightenment thinker Rousseau's idea of reciprocated duties, which states that the sovereign is committed to the good of the individuals who constitute it, and each individual is likewise committed to the good of the whole. And though this idea is based on the responsibilities of democracy, Rousseau's work implies an inherent link between upholding one's democracy and upholding one's society. And I had witnessed positive change from my actions. I had seen my friends adopting some of my habits. It had felt as though I was doing something positive for my community, and I lost that. Now, apart from the environmental issues, the importance of believing you can make a change has strong political implications. There is a term for this idea, in fact, political efficacy. It is the citizens' trust in their ability to change the government. And feelings of efficacy seem to be quite low in the US, at least in my region. And there are issues of voter suppression and inaccessibility that are seen across the globe as well, along with more local frustrations with the Electoral College and gerrymandering that explain away these feelings. But I wouldn't say they provide an excuse for inaction. It has actually been quite difficult in the past few elections to hear adults avoiding voting. Leading up to the 2016 election, before I was able to vote, I heard many adults around me lament over the poor quality of candidates. And they had these excuses that let them place their civic responsibility somewhere else at a time that felt very dire to me. According to Census Bureau data from the 2016 election, 15% of registered voters who chose not to cast a ballot did so because they didn't think their vote would make a difference. And this is a particularly painful statistic to hear, considering the race was by no means a landslide. And bear in mind that the number of registered voters who did not vote is in the tens of millions. This is not a small group of people. As told by an IEA civic education study, even as soon as by the end of secondary school, kids from around the world already feel less inclined to participate in politics because they doubt the responsiveness of their systems. And the problem, of course, with this mindset of not being able to affect change or influence systems is that it's never one person thinking that. When millions of people around the world start to adopt that same ideology is when there are serious roadblocks for making change happen. An argument for active participation in these systems lies in the 2020 election, which had the highest voter turnout the US had seen in over a century, which led to a race where the impact of every last vote was felt. In a crucial state, Georgia, for example, the eventual distribution of votes gave 49.47% in favor of Biden and 49.24% for Trump. It's quite close. I've seen passionate friends and family try to pick up the responsibility that they feel so many others have dropped. They have driven themselves mad, frankly, trying to compensate for the members of society that have taken very little action, whether that's environmentally, politically, or socially. And for the average person, this is so overwhelming that it comes at the cost of happiness and peace. And this is why my argument is not a call for anyone to drop their lives and become the next MLK Jr. or Gloria Steinem. It's not even a call to have an opinion on every political issue you encounter. It is just to consider a cause close to you that you could possibly advocate for in a better way. Attempting to elicit change when the general public often seems so reluctant to hear it is a very frustrating process. I've seen this in the attempts of my parents and other local organizers working in a not so progressive town with progressive ideas. But over the years, I have seen the change that they have, and I believe our community would be worse off without them. I believe that for the sake of our society and communities, we have an inherent responsibility to each other to better our systems whenever possible. And even if ultimately your efforts at changing don't change much, I believe that the cause, just the act of fighting for a cause, can be reward enough. As told by Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata, it is better to die standing than to live on your knees. Thank you.